What up? It's your boy, the Incredible Man. Yes, I'm back at it again, and this is my discussion/review of episode 13 of Vinland Saga, man. And it was absolutely wonderful, man. I loved every single moment of it. And if you would have asked me last week how much information we're going to get in the next episode, I don't know, maybe a little. No, we got a lot, man. We got so much information in this episode, and everything that was done in this episode was absolutely wonderful, and I enjoyed every single moment of it, man. I also reacted to the opening before I watched this episode because I didn't want to get thrown off or anything. So I reacted to the opening, and watching the opening, I saw so much going on that I didn't really kind of quite grasp everything that was happening. So when I saw the dude coming out of the water and then toting the woman on his back, and we see him talking to the general, or the guy that's on the horse that looking like thing, which is the guy that we've been introduced to since a couple episodes ago, and he knows Askeladd, I didn't know what was going on. But come to find out, that was Askeladd walking out of the water toting his mom on his back because she was sick. Seeing that in the opening, I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. But finding out who exactly it was and what happened in this episode, dude, now I know that there's so much going on, man. There's so much happening. And this is why I love this show, man. Everything just shot up 10 levels. And everything became way more interesting. And I'm super intrigued now. And all of that only led to another part of greatness, which is Canute stood up, showed out, and was talking full-fledged this whole episode, man. At the beginning, yeah, he was still kind of his normal self and kind of shy and didn't want to say anything. But after all of everything that happened, man, then we get to see him tearing into Thorfinn, and him and Thorfinn going back and forth and having an argument and a conversation, and Ragnar's looking like, oh, the prince is talking to someone other than me, and him and Thorfinn are having like a wonderful back and forth, man, and I loved seeing that happen between them. But let's get into this episode, man, because there's so much to discuss. So we pick up right after last week's episode with the ambush taking place, but to come to find out that it wasn't an actual ambush, it was a setup because another kind of domain / kingdom of Wales wanted to know where they stood with Prince Canute and the king of the Danes, and they don't really trust the Danes at all. Excuse me. But come to find out, this episode was so much more. It was so much more than what we actually apparently thought it was, because also they set all this up in motion just to kind of see where they stood with the Danes. And then Askeladd set it up as well to try to force, he didn't work with them or anything, but that also showed an opportunity for Askeladd to try to push Canute into a leadership role to become king. But all of that was just minor compared to what we got this episode, which is Askeladd is part Danish, part Wales, and that's why he knows the commander, because he met the commander when he was 14 years old, because his mother is Welsh. That's how you make a character super intriguing, because leading up to everything, we had no reason to suspect that this would be the outcome. And that's just nice, because what's next is the icing on the cake. He's a descendant of the person that the tales of King Arthur was based upon. Dude, tell me, are you not losing your marbles over this? This is absolutely fantastic, man. So we have a young Askeladd in the opening that we saw coming out of the water because his father was a Danish person that was pretty much, kind of like a ruler type, which is Olaf. And that's what that name is, like, super familiar. But anyway, and his mother was one of his wives, concubines, sex slaves, or whatever. And they had him. But, oh, dude, he is a descendant of the guy that King Arthur was actually based upon. He's part Welsh, he's part Danish, and actually he hates the Danes because of what his father did to his mother. There's so much going on in this story now. I knew that this story was awesome, and I loved the show. And following Thorfinn on his journey and watching everything unfold was nice. But I want more Askeladd story and backstory stuff like pronto, man, because it was way too fantastic. So then we have Askeladd striking a deal with the other guy from the another Welsh kingdom to let them pass through their territory and everything, and they're kind of setting all this up, and they end up doing it, but they have to give away their weapons just for a short time, and so they could give away their weapons for a short time so they can pass through their territory. And Ragnar and Thorfinn were like, they're not giving theirs up. He tried to convince Ragnar, and Ragnar was like, no. And he was like, well, how come and everyone else gave up theirs. And Ragnar was asking Askeladd, how did you convince all your men to give up their weapons? Easily, because they trust me. And he was like, well, what about him? Well, he's different. And him meaning Thorfinn was like, what? No. Hey, old man, listen. I'm not with him. I'm an enemy, okay? I'm not one of his men. I'm an enemy. I'm gonna kill him one of these days. And then he called Askeladd bald. Thorfinn was awesome, man, this episode. And seeing him and Prince Canute go back and forth. But mentioning this, I also wanted to talk about the fact that Bjorn and the other guy, I know his name too, but I can't think of it. But that Bjorn and the other guy were having a whole conversation while we didn't really get to hear Askeladd's plot. They showed us them talking and everything, but they panned to Bjorn and the other guy having a nice conversation talking about how they both neither really know anything about Askeladd, and Bjorn's been with him for decades, but he doesn't know anything about Askeladd. And you know what's so good about this, man? It's because now I'm super intrigued how everything's going to unfold in the future, because Bjorn and the other guy were talking this whole episode about how they were trusting, I don't know why I'm using air quotes again, about how they trust Askeladd. And Askeladd mentioned this episode talking to the other Welsh guy, I hate the Danes. Now, it all could be a front, but I'm starting to think that actually may be true. So, dude, there's so much information, my mind is overloaded. But then we also dive into a miniature and very, very brief backstory of Prince Canute, and we hear and it's being told by Ragnar, and he's telling that all of the other princes and princesses and stuff, I'm assuming, or his other family members, were all killing each other to try to take the throne. And Canute, being who he was and being sickly, he just kind of let it happen and unfold, and like he didn't make any waves. He just went with the motion and the flow, so he wouldn't be on anyone's radar. And that's how he became so sheltered and timid, because he was so afraid of getting killed by his own family, and that can scar anybody. So I definitely see that, and I want more backstory on Canute as well, because stuff is getting super interesting in this story from Askeladd's perspective, Canute's perspective. I'm so intrigued by everything that's taking place, and I love that, man. This is why I love Vinland Saga, man. Then we also hear Askeladd and the Welsh general commander guy that he knows ever since he was 14, apparently, talking, and he was like, well, Ragnar babies Canute too much, and eventually a fledgling has to leave the nest, and he was saying that Askeladd is gonna have to convince Canute to leave the nest. But dude, after this episode, he may not have to. You know who convinced him? That's Thorfinn. So then we jump straight into the whole part about Thorfinn and Canute's little tiff, and I loved it, man. I absolutely loved it. Canute stood up, and I'm so pumped that he was talking this episode. He was like responding, and dude, he wasn't timid at all. He was laying into Thorfinn, and Thorfinn just didn't care, like, hi, ohime sama. And I loved it, man. I love their back and forth, and I'm super excited to see where their relationship is gonna go. And I'm hoping it's that whole kind of love-hate type of friendship type thing, and eventually coming best friends or something. I hope it's like along that lines, because I can see them having that, man. And I love that between them. Oh, then we also have everyone around them stop moving just to listening to Canute lay into Thorfinn. It was fun, man. The ending part had got really funny and fun at the end, and I enjoyed that as well. I think that's all that happened. We also got, when they were walking through the other Welsh kingdom's village, we had some of their civilians, I guess, some of their people just looking at them like, oh my gosh, it's the Danes, and like, you know, they eat people. One dude was gonna throw a rock, and that dude was like, no, you do not do that. You do not throw rocks. So yeah, it was a nice episode, but it was so jam-packed with information, man. And I I need more, man, on Thorfinn and Canute's backstory. I mean, not Thorfinn, Askeladd and Canute's backstory, because I'm super intrigued, man. This is your boy, Dick Incredible. Don't forget to smash that like button till you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them. And subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that anime matters, anime is greatness, and anime is life, man. Peace out.